Hi everyone, my name is Sharon Wray, and I am a writer for Sourcebooks. I write their Deadly Force romantic suspense series, and my third book, In Search of Truth, just came out in February. I'm very excited because it's one of my favorite books in the series. And the series is actually about a group of ex-Green Berets that were dishonorably discharged and let go from the Army, and half of their men were sent to prison. And they have no idea why. They have no money, no power. They run a pirate-themed gym in Savannah, in a kind of a rundown, nasty area. And they're desperate to figure out what happened, to redeem their honor and to save the men still in prison. All of these books, as you can see, they're kind of long. All of them are over about 500 pages. They are Dan Brown type mysteries with complex interlocking plots that cross between each individual book. And this third book that I'm reading from, In Search of Truth, is about the anthropologist Alison Pinckney, who is stunned when she inherits a key to a 17th century cipher that makes her the target of two brutal arms dealers. Now to save those she loves, she must solve the cipher. With this perilous mission growing ever more dangerous, she reluctantly seeks the help from ex-Green Beret Zach Tremaine, the one man she's been avoiding. Because if she gives in to her long-buried feelings for him, it could cost them their lives. Zach Tremaine is haunted by regrets. Years ago, he betrayed his men and lost the only woman he ever loved. Now that his men are caught in a fierce rivalry between two deadly enemies, his only hope is to team up with Allison. She holds the secret to a pirate treasure, and he must take the chance to save his men and redeem his honor, even if she breaks his heart again. So this book has a lot going on in it. There's a reunion romance. Zach has been in love with Allison since college. Only Allison then went ahead and married his best friend, a man named Stuart. And this book takes place years later after Stuart's death. And like I said, they're complex mysteries with a lot of adult situations and a lot of fun wrapped up in between. So I'm going to read to you from the prologue, which sets up this book, which actually takes place before the series even starts. Okay, prologue. When was the last time you saw a man bow? Allison Chastain Fenwick led Zach Tremaine onto the courtyard of Le Petit Theatre. Nestled in the French Quarter of New Orleans, the humid, flower-filled courtyard provided a reprieve from the freezing theater. A breeze tinged with jasmine and white lights wrapped around the trees, enhancing the romantic summer night. I have no idea. Zach took 2 flutes from a server's tray and handed her one. The champagne tickled her nose. As the courtyard filled with intermission-free guests, Zach found a clear spot near the raised fountain. Why? When I was leaving the ladies' room, Allison sat on the fountain's edge and her gown pooled on the bricks below. I bumped into someone. I apologized, but he just wrapped his arms around his waist and bowed. By the time I blinked, he'd disappeared. Maybe it's a Charleston thing. It's certainly not a New Orleans thing, he said. She sipped her champagne. It is not a Charleston thing. It's a weird thing, so it has to be from New Orleans, which you would know since you're a native Cajun. Zach threw her a fake, offended look. Says the woman whose Charlestonian last names are so old she has to use both of them? She laughed at their ongoing joke about the differences between their hometowns and punched his shoulder. The U.S. Army had turned him into a wall of muscle, so her fist probably hurt far more than his shoulder. He smiled, took her hand, and kissed her palm. Maybe it's a formal thing, she offered to keep the peace. He was wearing a tux. At this last word, she raised her eyebrow. Whilst she'd chosen a long blue satin gown in honor of Hamlet's opening night, Zach rarely wore anything other than jeans and t-shirts. She was happy with his pressed gray trousers, white button-down shirt, and striped tie, despite his almost shaved black hair. When he pulled at his collar and scanned the courtyard, she hid her smile behind another sip of champagne. Wouldn't surprise her if he was armed. Glass broke behind her, and she glanced toward the noise. People were clearing away. As they drifted from the mess, she saw a solitary man in the corner. He stood near a potted palm with his hands in the pockets of his wrinkled, ill-fitted blue suit. The kind of suit someone borrowed or rented, but not owned. The other odd thing, he was staring directly at Zach. Zach tapped her shoulder. Since we haven't seen each other since graduation, we have toasts to make. First, to me. She laughed out loud. To you? Yes. He held up his glass. Congratulations to me on completing the Special Forces Assessment and Selection course. Soon, hopefully, I'll be a Green Beret. Oh my gosh. She stood and gave him a hug. After they'd graduated from Tulane, Zach, who'd been an Army ROTC cadet, had hoped to become a Special Forces officer, but she was so very happy for him. She pulled away. She raised her glass. May you win every battle and always return to us safe and sound. Us? Zach's brown eyes shuddered, and the lines around his mouth seemed deeper than before. Oh, of course, Stuart. Stuart will be happy for you. He's your best friend besides me. She fluttered her eyelashes until Zach smiled again. Stuart was sorry he couldn't make the play, but he'll meet us for dinner later. Zach raised his glass again. Here's to you crushing your cultural anthropology PhD program. They clinked glasses, and Allison ignored Zach's quiet laughter. She knew what Zach and Stuart believed, that the only job a cultural anthropology PhD could get was as a barista. Despite what you think, Allison tried to kick him with her high-heeled sandal until he moved. I'll get a job that doesn't require asking people if they want whipped cream on top. Now Zach laughed so loudly people glanced their way. It's my turn. Allison lifted her glass and with her other hand touched the sapphire and diamond engagement brooch attached to her neckline. To your best friend and my future husband, Stuart, who was just elected Tulane alumni president for our class year. I'm certain he'll become a bank president before he's 25. Zach nodded, although the shadows in his eyes reappeared. I have no doubt. They clinked glasses for the third time. She felt a rare tremble of happiness. She'd always been so alone, but tonight she felt safe. She was engaged to Stuart. Zach had come home to visit. For the first time in years, she felt like nothing bad could ever happen to her again. The audience began to file back into the theater, leaving them alone, but neither one of them wanted to return to the play. I'm sorry I missed your engagement party. Zach gave his glass to the last server standing. I was training. I understand. She cleared her throat and handed her glass away as well. She drank almost all of it and her head felt fuzzy. I sent you photos. I got them. Zach crossed his arms and his gaze settled on the brooch pinned to her dress. Allison, are you sure marrying Stuart is the right thing to do? Why would you ask that? I know you, and I love you. The courtyard lights reflected the truth in Zach's eyes. He stood so close, his breath caressed her forearm, and his insanely sexy Bayram clone sent tingles down her arms. Stuart loves me. I love him. I'm certain of it. Certainty is an impossibility. Zach pushed a stray curl behind her ear. She shivered at the touch of his fingers against her face. I don't understand. You're not in love with him the way a woman is supposed to love a husband. Her breath snagged, making it hard to breathe without hyperventilating. He'd always discerned all of her insecurities and vulnerabilities. Here in the courtyard, she was defenseless. Zach, I'm begging you, he said. Rethink this marriage. Stuart may be able to give you the security you think you need, but it'll never be enough. Not for either of you. What are you saying? That Stuart will break my heart? No, Zach whispered. You're going to break all of our hearts. She blinked as he lowered his head. When his lips touched hers, her first thought was that they were so much softer and gentler than they appeared. He held her head at the perfect angle so he could deepen the kiss. In all the years they'd known each other, he'd never touched her so intimately, and now that they were locked in this embrace, she wondered why. Horrified at her reaction, Allison pulled back and pressed her fingers against her mouth. That's when she noticed two things. The ill-suited man moving closer and another tuxedoed man following behind. This tuxedoed man with dark skin and green eyes was the bowing man she'd seen earlier in the evening. Something glinted in the bowing man's hands. A small sword? Zach? Zach twisted just as the ill-suited man pulled something out of his jacket. Zach grabbed her by the waist and hit the ground. Her hands took the brunt of their fall, scraping on the bricks. The pain made her dizzy, but not enough to ignore the action she saw from beneath Zach's larger body. The bowing man moved behind the ill-suited man and slid his thin sword into the man's neck. The ill-suited man silently slumped to the ground. Suddenly, with Zach on one knee and holding his handgun, the bowing man pressed his sword against Zach's heart. Hold your peace, the bowing man demanded in a distinct Australian accent. Do not fear. Tonight's violence has been met and needed. Zach placed his gun on the ground and rose slowly, both hands held up in surrender. The bowing man retracted his sword, which became a thin, 10-inch long wand of steel. He slipped it into his jacket pocket. My name's Laertes. I venture here tonight to bring a message and a warning. Allison took Zach's hand and he helped her up, making sure she stayed behind him. He didn't speak, so she didn't either. Not that she could cobble together any words. All she could do was stare at the dead man and keep the nausea at bay. With no visible blood, he seemed to be asleep. Laertes took a cell phone from the dead man's pocket and tossed it to Zach. The dead man's messages were open, and Zach clicked on an image. A short, silent video appeared along with the sent and read receipt. Allison's body shook. The ill-suited man had texted the video of their kiss to Stuart. Zach handed the phone back to Laertes. Laertes glanced to one side, and she noticed another tuxedoed man deeper in the shadows. She grabbed Zach's arms. There were two of them? My lord has decreed that now is not the time for your understanding. Laertes put the phone into a different pocket than the sword. 'Tis time for a change. What are you talking about? Zach asked. Laertes hit his own chest with his fist. My lord believes you are not meant for your life's work. You have other passions he encouraged you to pursue. Was that the message she took? She took Zach's hand, or the warning? The warning is for you, my lady, Laertes said to her. Choose your lover wisely. She took a step back and swallowed the bitter taste in her mouth. The veins in Zach's neck bulged. Before they could respond, Laertes wrapped an arm around his waist and bowed. My lord must be cruel only to be kind. Thus bad begins and the worst remains behind. So that's the prologue, and then the book starts years later in Charleston. So these bowing men are part of an ancient order of assassins known as the Fianna, which were actually real in pagan Ireland, and they helped fend off the Roman invasions in the early pre-Christian, early pre-Christian Britain. Sorry about that. Anyway, in these books, I have resurrected the Fianna, and they are now assassins that roam the world righting wrongs. And these assassins are looking eventually for a pirate treasure that Zach and Allison will eventually have to find for them. And there are other villains running around, and there's even an old ghost of the first witch ever burned in Charleston, actually ever potentially hanged. So there's a lot going on. It's a lot of fun. It's action-packed. And I really, really hope you guys enjoy it. So please, if there's any comments or questions, please leave them below, and I will answer them as quickly as I can. Thanks so much, and I appreciate you joining me here in Virginia. Bye.